The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside the dusty trading post in Shafter, Texas, and Owen O'Malley knew immediately something was wrong by the way the driver jumped down with panic written across his weathered face. It was August of 1879, and the heat shimmered off the desert landscape like waves on an invisible ocean. Owen had been checking the shoes on his quarter horse when the commotion started, and he straightened up, wiping the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The driver was already calling for help, his voice cracking with urgency as he yanked open the coach door. "She needs a doctor. Anyone got medicine?" Owen dropped his tools and strode toward the coach, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. He had been working as a ranch hand on the Double J cattle operation for 3 years now, and in that time, he had seen plenty of folks pass through this remote corner of Texas. Most were heading to California or fleeing from something back east. Few stayed long in Shafter, a mining town that existed primarily because of the silver that had been discovered in these hills. When he reached the stagecoach, he peered inside and felt his breath catch. A young woman lay slumped against the worn leather seat, her dark hair matted with sweat, her face flushed with an alarming shade of red that spoke of dangerous fever. Her dress was travel-worn and dusty, and her chest rose and fell with shallow, labored breaths. "What happened?" Owen asked, already reaching in to help move her. "She boarded in El Paso 3 days ago," the driver said, his voice trembling. "Seemed fine at first, maybe a little tired. But yesterday she started burning up. I thought maybe the heat, but this morning she could barely speak. I pushed the horses hard to get here, but I do not think she is going to make it unless someone does something quick." Owen carefully lifted the woman from the coach, surprised by how light she felt in his arms. Up close, even with the flush of fever, he could see she was beautiful, probably no more than 22 or 23 years old. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open, and when he adjusted his grip, he could feel the frightening heat radiating from her body through the fabric of her dress. "Where is Doc Mercer?" Owen called out to the small crowd that had gathered. "He rode out to the Garrison Ranch 2 days ago," someone answered. "Their boy broke his leg. He will not be back until tomorrow at the earliest." Owen felt his jaw tighten. Tomorrow might be too late. He had seen fever like this before, back when his younger sister had taken ill with influenza when he was 17. The memory still haunted him because they had waited too long to act, thinking she would recover on her own. By the time they realized how serious it was, there was nothing anyone could do. He had sworn then that he would never stand by helpless again. "We need to get her temperature down," Owen said, making a decision. He looked at the driver. "Does she have any belongings, any medicine in her bags?" The driver shook his head grimly. "I already checked. She has got clothes and some personal items, but no medicine. Nothing that will help with this." Owen cursed under his breath. The nearest real town with a proper pharmacy was Fort Davis, nearly 40 miles north through difficult terrain. Even in good weather, it was a hard ride that would take most of a day. But the sky to the west was already darkening with the promise of one of those sudden desert storms that could turn the landscape into a treacherous mess of flash floods and lightning. "Someone get me cold water and clean cloths," Owen ordered, carrying the woman toward the trading post. "And find me somewhere to lay her down that is not in the direct heat." The trading post owner, a gray-haired man named Henderson, quickly cleared a back room that he usually used for storage. It was not much, just a small space with a cot and a single window, but it was cooler than outside and offered some privacy. Owen laid the woman down gently, noting how she murmured something incomprehensible, her head turning restlessly on the thin pillow. "A woman from town, Mrs. Patterson," appeared with a basin of water and several clean rags. She had raised 5 children and knew a thing or two about nursing the sick. "Poor thing," she murmured, immediately dipping a cloth in the water and beginning to sponge the fevered woman's face and neck. "What is her name?" "I do not know," Owen admitted, feeling strangely bothered by this fact. He turned to the stagecoach driver who had followed them inside. "Did she give you a name?" "Ticket says Harper," the driver said, pulling a crumpled paper from his vest pocket. "Harper Ellsworth. That is all I know." "Harper." Owen repeated the name silently, watching as Mrs. Patterson worked to cool Harper's burning skin. Even unconscious, there was something captivating about her, something that made him want to know her story. What had brought her to this desolate part of Texas? Where had she been going? And why did she have no medicine with her if she had been feeling unwell? "She needs more than cold water," Mrs. Patterson said after a few minutes, her expression grave. "This fever is too high. If we cannot break it soon, she could have seizures or worse." Owen knew she was right. He had been thinking the same thing, turning over options in his mind, none of them good. The storm clouds were building faster now, and he could hear the first rumbles of distant thunder. If he was going to ride to Fort Davis for medicine, he needed to leave immediately. But even then, could he make it there and back before the fever did permanent damage? What kind of medicine would help? Owen asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Quinine would be best if this is malaria," Mrs. Patterson said. "But even laudanum or willow bark extract would help with the fever and pain. The problem is we do not have anything like that here in Shafter. Henderson keeps a few basic supplies, but nothing for something this serious." Owen stepped outside, his mind racing. The storm was definitely coming, the wind already picking up and carrying with it the smell of rain. Lightning flashed on the horizon, and he counted the seconds until the thunder reached him. Still far off, but moving fast. If he rode hard and pushed his horse beyond what was reasonable, he might be able to reach Fort Davis in 6 or 7 hours. But that would be in good conditions. In a storm, through terrain that included rocky passes and at least 2 creek crossings that could flood, the journey could take twice that long or prove impossible altogether. He thought again of his sister, of holding her hand as she slipped away, of the guilt that had eaten at him for years afterward. He had been too young then, too powerless to do anything. But he was not that helpless boy anymore. He was 26 years old, strong and skilled in the saddle. If there was a chance he could save Harper Ellsworth, he had to take it. Owen walked back to where his horse was tied and began preparing for the journey. His quarter horse, a sturdy gelding named Copper, was reliable and had carried him through difficult situations before. He checked the saddle, made sure everything was secure, and grabbed his rein slicker from his saddlebag. "You are really going to try it?" The voice belonged to Frank Morrison, another ranch hand from the Double J. "Owen, that storm is going to be a bad one. You can see it building. And it will be full dark before you even get halfway there." "She will die if I do not," Owen said simply, tightening the cinch on his saddle. "Doc Mercer is not coming back in time, and we have got nothing here that will help her." "You could die too," Frank pointed out. "Those creeks will flood, and if you get thrown from your horse out there in the dark, nobody will even know where to look for you." Owen paused, considering his friend's words. Frank was right about the dangers. The route to Fort Davis was treacherous enough in daylight. At night, in a storm, it would be nearly suicidal. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Harper's flushed face, heard her labored breathing, and knew he could not stand by and do nothing. "Then I better not get thrown," Owen said, swinging up into the saddle. Copper shifted beneath him, sensing his rider's tension. "If I am not back by tomorrow afternoon, tell the boss what happened." "Owen, wait." Frank grabbed Copper's bridle. "At least take a gun. There have been reports of raiders in the hills, and if you run into trouble out there alone." Owen nodded and accepted the rifle Frank retrieved from the trading post. He was not much for violence, preferred to talk his way out of confrontations when possible, but his friend was right that riding alone in this country after dark was dangerous for more than just the weather. He secured the rifle to his saddle and took one last look at the darkening sky. "Take care of her while I am gone," Owen said. "Keep her cool, get water in her if you can. I will be back as fast as possible." Before Frank could argue further, Owen spurred Copper into motion. The horse responded immediately, breaking into a smooth gallop that carried them out of Shafter and onto the rough trail that led north. Behind him, Owen heard voices calling out, but he did not look back. Every minute counted now. The first hour of riding was manageable. The storm was still building, and though the wind had picked up significantly, the rain had not yet started. Copper maintained a steady pace, his hooves finding purchase on the rocky ground with the sure-footedness that had made him such a valuable horse. Owen leaned forward in the saddle, urging his mount on, his mind focused entirely on the journey ahead. He tried not to think about Harper lying in that back room, her body fighting a battle it might not win. Tried not to think about what would happen if he failed to return in time. Instead, he focused on the practical details. The route he would take, the landmarks he needed to watch for, the places where the trail became particularly treacherous. The sun was setting when the rain finally began, starting as a few scattered drops that quickly intensified into a steady downpour. Owen pulled his slicker tighter around himself, but within minutes he was soaked through. The temperature dropped sharply, and what had been oppressive heat became a cold, driving rain that stung his face and made visibility difficult. Copper slowed, more cautious now as the trail became slick with mud. Owen let him set the pace, trusting the horse's instincts. Pushing too hard now could result in a fall that would end the journey before they even reached the first creek crossing. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the landscape in brief, stark flashes. Thunder followed almost immediately, so loud that Owen felt it in his chest. Copper's ears flattened, but the horse kept moving, and Owen patted his neck gratefully. "Good boy," he murmured. "Just keep going. We can do this." The first creek crossing came sooner than Owen expected, and when he saw it, his heart sank. What had been a shallow stream when he last traveled this route was now a churning torrent of water, swollen by the rain that was hammering down on the surrounding hills. He could hear the roar of it even over the storm, could see debris being swept along by the current. Owen dismounted, leading Copper closer to assess the situation. The creek was at least 20 feet wide here, and the water was moving fast. Too fast. Trying to cross would be incredibly dangerous, but what choice did he have? Backtracking to find another crossing point would add hours to his journey, hours that Harper did not have. He studied the water, looking for the shallowest point, the place where the current seemed least violent. There, about 30 feet upstream, where some larger rocks created a slight break in the flow. It was not much, but it might be enough. Owen led Copper to the spot, speaking to the horse in a calm, steady voice despite the fear knotting in his stomach. "Easy now. We are going to take this real slow. You just follow my lead." He stepped into the water, and immediately the current grabbed at his legs, trying to sweep his feet out from under him. The water was cold, shockingly so after the day's heat, and it rose quickly to his waist. Copper balked, not wanting to enter the treacherous stream, but Owen kept a firm grip on the reins and continued forward. "Come on, boy. I need you to trust me." The horse took a tentative step, then another. The water reached Copper's chest, and Owen could feel the animal's muscles tensing, ready to bolt. He kept talking, kept moving, focusing all his attention on reaching the far bank. The rocks beneath his feet were slippery, and more than once he nearly lost his balance. The current was stronger than he had anticipated, and he had to fight for every step. Halfway across, his foot slipped on an algae-covered stone, and for a terrifying moment, Owen went under. Water filled his nose and mouth, and he felt himself being pulled downstream. His hand remained locked on Copper's reins, and the horse, panicking now, lunged forward. The movement was enough to drag Owen back to his feet, coughing and sputtering, his heart hammering in his chest. He did not stop, could not afford to. With renewed determination, he pushed forward, and suddenly they were climbing up the muddy bank on the far side, both man and horse dripping and exhausted but alive. Owen took a moment to catch his breath, bending over with his hands on his knees. That had been far too close. If Copper had not had such a steady temperament, if the horse had torn free and run, Owen would have been swept away. He straightened up, patted Copper's neck in thanks, and remounted. They could not afford to waste time recovering. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. The wind had become a constant howling presence, and the rain fell in sheets so thick that Owen could barely see 10 feet ahead. Lightning continued to split the sky with alarming frequency, and each crash of thunder made Copper flinch. Owen urged the horse on, hunching in the saddle against the weather. His clothes were plastered to his body, and despite his slicker, he was chilled to the bone. But he kept Harper's face in his mind, kept remembering the way she had looked so vulnerable in that stagecoach, and it gave him the strength to continue. The hours blurred together into an endless nightmare of rain, wind, and darkness. Owen lost track of time, could only measure progress by the familiar landmarks he occasionally glimpsed when lightning illuminated the world. There was the old lightning-struck cottonwood, its bare branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. There was the rocky outcropping that looked like a crouching bear. Each one told him he was still on the right path, still making progress toward Fort Davis. The second creek crossing was even worse than the first. The water was deeper here, the current more violent, and there were no rocks to provide any kind of shelter from the flow. Owen almost turned back, almost decided that this was too much, that he was going to get himself killed for a woman he did not even know. But then he thought about how he would feel if he gave up now, if he returned to Shafter only to find that Harper had died while he was safe and dry somewhere, having chosen the easy path. He thought about his sister again, about regrets that lasted a lifetime. No, he had come this far. He would see it through. This time, Owen stayed mounted. It was risky, but Copper was tall enough that keeping the rider above water might make the difference. He aimed for what looked like the shallowest point and urged the horse forward. Copper entered the water reluctantly, and immediately the current grabbed at them both. The crossing was terrifying. The water rose above Owen's stirrups, soaking his legs, and Copper had to swim for several yards. Owen could feel the horse struggling, could feel the animal's fear, but he kept the reins steady and his voice calm. "That is it, just a little further. You can do it, boy." Something large, a tree branch or piece of debris, slammed into them from upstream. The impact almost unseated Owen, and Copper reared in panic, nearly throwing them both into the churning water. Owen gripped with his legs, hauling on the reins to keep the horse's head up, and somehow they stayed together. Then, miraculously, Copper's hooves found purchase on the creek bed again, and they were climbing out on the far side, both of them trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Owen slumped forward in the saddle for a moment, just breathing, grateful beyond words that they had made it. The rest of the journey to Fort Davis was a test of pure endurance. The storm continued unabated, and Owen felt himself growing numb, both from the cold and from the sheer physical toll of riding for so many hours through such brutal conditions. He caught himself dozing in the saddle several times, jerking awake when Copper stumbled or when a particularly loud thunderclap shattered the night. But finally, after what felt like an eternity, Owen saw lights ahead. Fort Davis. The sight gave him a surge of energy, and he urged Copper into a faster pace. The town was quiet, most sensible people having taken shelter from the storm, but Owen knew where he needed to go. There was a pharmacy on the main street, run by a man named Guthrie who had served as a medic during the war. Owen dismounted in front of the pharmacy, his legs so stiff he nearly collapsed when his feet hit the ground. He tied Copper to the hitching post and pounded on the door, not caring that it had to be close to midnight and he was likely waking the proprietor from sleep. "Guthrie, open up. I need medicine." It took several minutes of pounding before he heard movement inside. A lamp was lit, and then the door opened a crack. An older man with gray hair and a suspicious expression peered out. "What in blazes is all this racket? Do you know what time it is?" "I need quinine," Owen said, his voice hoarse from hours of yelling over the storm. "Or laudanum, or anything that will break a high fever. There is a woman dying in Shafter, and I rode through this storm to get here. Please." Something in Owen's face, in the desperation of his voice, must have convinced Guthrie. The pharmacist's expression softened, and he opened the door wider. "Get in here before you catch your death, too. Let me see what I have." Inside, the pharmacy was warm and dry, and Owen felt himself shaking as his body began to thaw. Guthrie moved around behind his counter, pulling down various bottles and packages, squinting at labels in the lamplight. "Quinine I have got," he said, "and some willow bark powder. I will give you laudanum too, just in case she is in pain. You say she has a high fever." "Very high," Owen confirmed. "She has been unconscious since the stagecoach arrived this afternoon. Maybe longer." Guthrie nodded, wrapping the medicines carefully in oilcloth to protect them from the rain. "You will want to give her a small dose of quinine every 4 hours if you can get her to swallow. Mix the willow bark powder in water. The laudanum is only if she is in severe pain, mind you. Too much can be dangerous." "How much do I owe you?" Owen asked, reaching for the coins he kept in his vest pocket. Guthrie waved him off. "Pay me next time you are in town. Right now you need to get back to this woman before the medicine does her no good. And son, take these." The pharmacist pressed a small package into Owen's hands. When Owen opened it, he found beef jerky and hardtack. "You look half dead yourself," Guthrie said. "Eat something before you ride back or you will not make it, and if this storm gets any worse, you find shelter, understand? No sense in both of you dying." Owen thanked him profusely and tucked the food into his saddlebag along with the precious medicines. He knew he should probably rest for a few hours, let Copper recover, but all he could think about was Harper and how much time had already passed. It had to be close to 1 in the morning now, which meant she had been fevered for at least 12 hours, probably longer. Every moment mattered. He swung back into the saddle, ignoring his body's protests, and turned Copper back toward the trail. Guthrie stood in the doorway of his pharmacy, shaking his head. "You are either the bravest man I have met or the most foolish," the pharmacist called out. "Good luck to you." The ride back was even harder than the journey to Fort Davis. Owen was exhausted now, past the point where adrenaline could sustain him, and Copper was equally worn out. The horse's steps were slow and careful, and Owen did not have the heart to push for more speed. They had both given everything they had just to make it this far. The storm finally began to ease around 3 in the morning, the rain reducing from a torrential downpour to a steady drizzle. The wind died down, and the lightning moved off to the east, leaving behind an eerie quiet. Owen dozed in the saddle, trusting Copper to follow the trail, jerking awake periodically to check their progress. Dawn was breaking when they reached the first creek crossing again. The water level had dropped slightly, but the crossing was still treacherous. Owen was so tired he could barely think straight, but somehow he managed to guide Copper through. The second crossing was equally nightmarish, but they made it, both of them moving like ghosts, operating on instinct and determination alone. The sun was fully up when Owen finally saw Shafter in the distance. He had been in the saddle for nearly 14 hours, had ridden close to 80 miles through the worst storm he had ever experienced, but he had done it. He had the medicine. Now he just had to pray that Harper was still alive to take it. People came running when they saw him approaching. Owen barely registered their voices, their questions. He handed the reins to someone, trusted that they would take care of Copper, and stumbled toward the trading post on legs that could barely support his weight. "Owen, thank God," that was Frank's voice. "We thought you might have been killed out there." "Harper," Owen managed to say. "Is she?" "Still alive, but barely. Mrs. Patterson has been with her all night. Come on." Frank supported Owen as they made their way to the back room. Inside, Owen found Mrs. Patterson looking exhausted, her face drawn with worry. Harper lay on the cot, still flushed with fever, her breathing rapid and shallow, but she was alive. Owen fumbled with the oilcloth package, his cold fingers clumsy. "Quinine," he said, "and willow bark. Guthrie said to give her a small dose every 4 hours, Mrs." Patterson took the medicines, her eyes widening. "You actually made it to Fort Davis and back. I did not think it was possible." "Is she going to be all right?" Owen asked, swaying on his feet. "With this medicine, she has got a real chance now," Mrs. Patterson said. She was already preparing a dose, mixing the willow bark powder in water. "But you need to sit down before you fall down. Frank, get him some dry clothes and hot coffee." Owen wanted to protest, wanted to stay and watch as they administered the medicine, but his body had finally reached its limit. He felt his knees buckle, and then Frank was catching him, guiding him to a chair in the corner of the room. "I have got you," Frank said. "You did it, Owen. You did the impossible. Now let us take care of both of you." The next several hours passed in a haze for Owen. He vaguely remembered changing into dry clothes, remembered someone pressing a cup of hot coffee into his hands, remembered the warmth of a blanket being draped over his shoulders. But mostly, he remembered watching Mrs. Patterson carefully spoon medicine into Harper's mouth, remembered the anxious wait to see if it would make a difference. Owen must have fallen asleep at some point, because when he opened his eyes, the light in the room had changed. It was late afternoon, and his body ached in ways he had not known were possible. But the first thing he looked for was Harper, and what he saw made his heart leap. Her color was better. The alarming flush of fever had faded to something more normal, and her breathing seemed deeper, more regular. Mrs. Patterson was checking her pulse, and the older woman was smiling. "The fever broke about 2 hours ago," she said softly, noticing Owen was awake. "That ride of yours saved her life. Another few hours, and I do not think anything could have helped." Owen felt a wave of relief so intense it almost brought tears to his eyes. "She is really going to be all right. I believe so. She will need rest and care for a few days, but the crisis has passed. You should be proud of yourself, young man. What you did last night, riding through that storm, that took real courage." Owen stood up slowly, his muscles protesting, and moved closer to the cot. In the better light, with the fever no longer distorting her features, he could see Harper more clearly. She had delicate features, a scattering of freckles across her nose and dark lashes that rested against her cheeks. Even in sleep, there was something about her that drew him in. "Has she woken at all?" he asked. "Not yet, but I expect she will soon." When she does, she's going to want answers about where she is and what happened. And she's going to want to know who rode through hell and high water to save her life. Owen felt his face warm at the praise. He had not done it for recognition or gratitude. He had done it because it was the right thing to do, because he could not live with himself if he had stood by and done nothing. But now that the immediate danger had passed, now that he knew Harper would survive, he found himself curious about this woman he had risked so much for. Over the next 2 days, Owen remained close by, helping Mrs. Patterson care for Harper as she slowly recovered. He was there when she finally opened her eyes for the first time since arriving in Shafter, there when confusion and fear clouded her expression as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. "Easy, Mrs. Patterson said gently, placing a hand on Harper's shoulder to keep her from sitting up too quickly. "You are safe. You have been very ill, but you are going to be fine now." Harper's eyes, a striking shade of green, moved around the room until they landed on Owen. She stared at him for a long moment, and he wondered what she was thinking, what she saw when she looked at him. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "Shafter, Texas," Owen said, moving closer so she would not have to strain to hear him. "You came in on the stagecoach 3 days ago with a bad fever. Do you remember?" Harper frowned, clearly trying to recall. "I remember El Paso. I remember feeling hot, thinking it was just the weather. But after that, everything is foggy." "You had no medicine with you," Mrs. Patterson explained. "And our doctor was away. This young man, Owen O'Malley, rode through a terrible storm all the way to Fort Davis to get quinine for you. Near killed himself doing it, but he saved your life." Harper's eyes widened, and she looked at Owen with an expression he could not quite read. "You did that?" "For me, but you do not even know me." Owen felt suddenly self-conscious under her gaze. "I could not just stand by and let you die. Nobody should have to go through that alone without help." "I do not know what to say," Harper murmured. "Thank you does not seem like enough." "You do not have to say anything," Owen replied. "I am just glad you are all right, but what brought you to Shafter? Do you have family here? Someone we should send word to?" A shadow crossed Harper's face and she looked away. "No family, not anymore. I was traveling to California, hoping to find work there. My parents died last year, and I have been trying to make my own way since then. I thought maybe in California, with all the growth happening there, I could start fresh." Owen heard the loneliness in her voice, the quiet resignation of someone who had lost everything and was trying to rebuild from nothing. He understood that feeling more than she might guess. After his sister died, his family had fallen apart. His father had taken to drinking. His mother had retreated into grief. And Owen had eventually left home because staying there meant drowning in sadness. He had drifted for a few years before landing in Shafter, and even now, he sometimes felt like he was searching for something he could not quite name. "California is still a long way off," Owen said gently. "And you are going to need time to recover before you can travel again. Shafter is not much, but it is a place to rest for a while." "I do not have much money left," Harper admitted, her voice small. "Barely enough for another stage ticket, and certainly not enough to pay for room and board while I recover." Mrs. Patterson made a dismissive sound. "Do not you worry about that right now. We will figure something out. The important thing is getting you back on your feet." Over the following week, Owen found himself spending more and more time with Harper. At first, it was under the guise of helping Mrs. Patterson with her care. But as Harper grew stronger, Owen realized he was seeking out her company for other reasons. He enjoyed talking with her, hearing about her life before tragedy struck, learning about her dreams for the future. Harper had grown up in St. Louis, the only child of a shopkeeper and his wife. She had been educated, unusual for a woman of her background, and she spoke with an intelligence and curiosity that Owen found captivating. She told him about books she had read, places she dreamed of seeing, and the ache of losing both parents within months of each other to cholera. After they died, there was nothing left for me in St. Louis, Harper explained one afternoon as they sat outside the trading post, watching the sunset paint the desert sky in shades of orange and gold. The shop had debts I could not pay, and our home was sold to cover them. I thought about staying, finding work as a seamstress or a teacher maybe, but everything there reminded me of what I had lost. I needed to go somewhere new, somewhere I could breathe again. I understand that, Owen said, and he told her about his own family, about his sister's death and the way grief had poisoned his home. Sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away from the pain, even if it feels like you are abandoning something important. Harper looked at him with those green eyes that seemed to see right through him. You are not what I expected when I first woke up, and Mrs. Patterson told me what you had done. I thought you would be older, maybe, or more rough around the edges. But you are kind, thoughtful. Why did you really ride through that storm for me? Owen was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. When I was 17, my sister got sick, and we waited too long to get help. I watched her die, and I have carried that guilt ever since. When I saw you in that stagecoach, burning with fever, I saw her. I saw a chance to do what I could not do for Mary. I know it does not make sense, saving a stranger because I could not save family, but it was the only thing I could do. Harper reached out and placed her hand over his. It was the first time they had touched since he had carried her from the stagecoach, and Owen felt something electric pass between them at the contact. It makes perfect sense, Harper said softly. You are a good man, Owen O'Malley. The world needs more people like you. As the days turned into weeks, something shifted between them. What had started as gratitude on Harper's part and relief on Owen's evolved into something deeper, more complicated. Owen found himself thinking about Harper when he was working on the ranch, wondering what she was doing, whether she was feeling stronger, what she might like for dinner. He looked for excuses to be near her, to hear her laugh, to see the way her eyes lit up when she was excited about something. For her part, Harper seemed equally drawn to Owen. She asked about his work, expressed interest in learning about the ranch and the cattle. When she was well enough to walk around Shafter, Owen showed her the mining operations that had put the town on the map, the rocky landscape that could be harsh but also beautiful in its own way, the night sky that seemed to hold more stars than anywhere else on Earth. One evening, about 3 weeks after Harper had arrived in Shafter, they were sitting together on the porch of the trading post. The heat of the day had faded, and a cool breeze brought some relief from the relentless Texas summer. Harper had been quiet for a while, and Owen could sense she had something on her mind. I have been thinking about California, she said finally, about whether I still want to go there. Owen felt his heart skip a beat, and when I left St. Louis, I was running from pain. I thought distance would make things better, that starting over somewhere new would fill the emptiness. But being here, recovering, talking with you, it has made me realize something. It is not about the place, it is about the people. It is about finding somewhere you belong, somewhere you matter to someone. She turned to look at him, and in her eyes, Owen saw his own feelings reflected back. I think I might matter to you, Owen, and you matter to me, more than I expected, more than I know how to explain. Owen took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. You do matter to me, Harper, more than I have wanted to admit, even to myself. When I thought you might die, when I was riding through that storm not knowing if I would make it in time, all I could think about was that I had to save you. And now, the thought of you leaving, of getting on another stage coach and disappearing from my life, that terrifies me more than any storm ever could." "Then ask me to stay," Harper whispered. "Give me a reason to choose Shafter over California." Owen stood, pulling Harper to her feet, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then, slowly, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when Harper responded, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back with equal intensity, it became something more. It became a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because I am falling in love with you and I want to see where this goes. I want to build something with you, here in Shafter, or wherever we decide to go together." "I am falling in love with you too," Harper admitted. "I think I started falling the moment Mrs. Patterson told me what you had done for me, and every day since then has just made me more certain. Yes, Owen, I will stay." Their relationship deepened quickly after that. In a town as small as Shafter, news of their courtship spread fast, and most people seemed pleased. Owen had been well liked before, known as a hard worker and a decent man, and Harper had won people over with her grace and resilience. Mrs. Patterson, in particular, seemed delighted, telling anyone who would listen that she had known from the start they would fall for each other. Owen introduced Harper to his boss at the Double J Ranch, a gruff but fair man named Jack Thornton, who had given Owen a chance when he first arrived in Shafter with nothing but a horse and a need to prove himself. Jack took one look at Harper and then at Owen and gave a rare smile. "Well, I suppose you will be wanting to build yourself a proper house now instead of sleeping in the bunkhouse with the other hands," Jack said. "There is a piece of land on the north side of my property, good spot with a creek running through it. If you want it, we can work out an arrangement. Call it a bonus for all the hard work you have put in these past few years." Owen was speechless. Land of his own had been a distant dream, something he thought might be possible in another decade if he saved carefully. But Jack was offering him a chance to start building a real life now, with Harper by his side. "I do not know what to say," Owen managed. "Say yes and get to work," Jack replied. "That girl is not going to want to wait forever, and building a house takes time." Owen threw himself into the project with an energy born of love and hope. He worked his regular hours at the ranch, then spent every spare moment clearing land and laying the foundation for their future home. Harper helped where she could, planning the layout, suggesting where windows should go to catch the morning light, imagining where they might plant a garden. The house took shape slowly over the late summer and into fall. It was not large, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was sturdy and well built, constructed with Owen's own hands, and his heart poured into every nail and board. Other ranch hands helped during their free time, and even some of the townspeople pitched in, bringing materials or lending tools. The sense of community, of people coming together to help two young people in love, was something neither Owen nor Harper had experienced before, and it made Shafter feel like home in a way neither had expected. In October, with the house nearly complete, Owen asked Harper to marry him. There was no ring, not yet, but he got down on one knee in the doorway of their almost finished home and spoke from his heart. "Harper Ellsworth, you came into my life on the worst day, burning with fever and close to death, and somehow you have become the best thing that ever happened to me. You have given me purpose and joy and a reason to believe in tomorrow. Will you marry me? Will you make this house a home and build a life with me here in Shafter?" Harper, with tears streaming down her face, pulled him to his feet and kissed him. "Yes," she said between kisses. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in November in a simple ceremony at the small church in Shafter. Harper wore a dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, pale blue with lace at the collar, and Owen wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair slicked back and his face shaved smooth. Frank stood up as Owen's best man, and Mrs. Patterson served as Harper's matron of honor. The whole town turned out for the wedding, cramming into the tiny church to witness the union of the cowboy who had ridden through a storm and the woman he had saved. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Harper with all the love and promise he felt, and the congregation erupted in cheers and applause. At the reception afterward, held in the trading post with food contributed by everyone in town, people took turns toasting the newlyweds and sharing stories about the dramatic events that had brought them together. "To Owen," Frank said, raising his glass, "who proved that love really can conquer anything, even a Texas thunderstorm." "To Harper," Mrs. Patterson added, "who showed us all that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances." Owen and Harper moved into their new home that very night, and for the first time in both their lives, they felt like they truly belonged somewhere. The house might have been small, but it was theirs, filled with the promise of all the tomorrows they would share together. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. Life on the edge of the Texas desert was hard, the work was demanding, and there were times when money was tight. But they faced every difficulty together, and somehow that made even the hardest days bearable. Harper learned to manage their small household, to cook meals over the wood stove, to tend the vegetable garden she had planted in the spring. Owen continued working at the Double J, proving himself so valuable that Jack made him foreman by the end of the year, with a raise in pay that made their financial situation more comfortable. They also faced the ghosts of their pasts together. Owen told Harper about the nightmares he still sometimes had about his sister, about the guilt that would creep in during quiet moments. Harper shared her own grief about her parents, about the loneliness she had felt wandering alone in the world with no family to anchor her. But in sharing these burdens, they found healing. The past would always be part of them, but it no longer defined them. In their second year of marriage, Harper became pregnant. Owen was beside himself with joy and terror in equal measure. The memory of losing his sister, of how quickly illness could steal someone away, made him protective to the point of being overbearing. But Harper bore his worries with patience and grace, assuring him that she was healthy and strong, that everything would be fine. When her time came in the spring of 1882, Owen paced outside their bedroom for hours while Mrs. Patterson and the doctor, who had recently set up practice in Shafter, attended to Harper. He heard her cries of pain and wanted to burst through the door, to do something, anything to help. But Frank, who had come to wait with him, kept him calm. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time," Frank reminded him. "Harper is strong. She will get through this." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Owen heard a different sound, the lusty cry of a newborn baby. Moments later, Mrs. Patterson emerged, smiling. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy baby boy, and Harper is doing just fine." Owen rushed inside to find Harper exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. When she looked up at him, her eyes were shining with tears of joy. "Meet your son," she said softly. Owen approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe, and looked down at the tiny face of his child. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving one impossibly small fist in the air. Owen felt something crack open in his chest, a rush of love so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe this is real." They named the boy Oliver, after Owen's grandfather, with the middle name Thomas for Harper's father. Little Oliver proved to be a strong, healthy child, and watching him grow became Owen's greatest joy. He would come home from long days at the ranch to find Harper singing to their son, or playing with him on the floor. And in those moments, Owen knew that every hard thing he had ever endured had been worth it to arrive at this place of happiness. The years passed, each one bringing new blessings and challenges. Oliver grew into a curious, energetic toddler who loved to follow his father around the ranch, mimicking Owen's walk and trying to help with chores in ways that were more hindrance than help. When Oliver was 3, Harper became pregnant again, and this time they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Hannah, and she had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn determination. By 1885, Owen had saved enough money to buy a small herd of his own cattle, expanding beyond just working for Jack Thornton. With Jack's blessing, he began building his own operation on the land he had been given, working toward the dream of being a true rancher rather than just a hand. Harper supported him completely, managing their home and children while also helping with the ranch's books and planning. Their life was not easy. There were droughts that killed their crops and threatened their cattle. There were times when they had to make hard decisions about money, about whether they could afford to expand or needed to pull back. There were illnesses, thankfully nothing as serious as the fever that had nearly claimed Harper's life, but enough to remind them how fragile health could be. And there were moments when Owen's old nightmares would return, when he would wake in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, needing Harper's reassurance that everyone he loved was safe and well. But through it all, they had each other. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen took Harper up to a hill that overlooked their property, the house they had built together visible in the valley below, the cattle grazing peacefully in the pastures. "Do you remember when you asked me to give you a reason to stay instead of going to California?" Owen asked, holding Harper close as they watched the sunset. "I remember," Harper said. "You told me you were falling in love with me." "I was not falling," Owen corrected gently. "I had already fallen. I was just too scared to admit it. But now, looking at everything we have built, at our children, at this life we share, I know that saving you that night during the storm was not just about medicine. It was fate bringing us together. You were supposed to come to Shafter. I was supposed to ride through that storm. We were supposed to find each other." Harper turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. "Do you know what I think about sometimes? I think about how close we came to never meeting. If the stagecoach had been delayed, if you had not been in Shafter that day, if you had not been brave enough or crazy enough to ride through that storm, I would have died and you would never have known me. It terrifies me to think about." "But it did not happen that way," Owen said firmly. "You did not die. I did ride through that storm, and now we have this, a life better than anything I ever dreamed possible. You have given me everything, Harper: purpose, family, love. You have healed wounds I did not even know how to name." "We healed each other," Harper corrected. "I was lost and alone, running from grief with nowhere to go. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to believe in happiness again. We saved each other, Owen." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold. And in that moment, everything was perfect. As their children grew, Owen and Harper made sure to tell them the story of how they met, how their father had ridden through a terrible storm to save their mother's life. Oliver and Hannah loved the tale, always begging for more details, wanting to hear about the flooded creeks and the lightning and the way their father had refused to give up even when it seemed impossible. "You are a hero, Papa," Oliver would say, his eyes wide with admiration. "I am not a hero," Owen would always reply. "I am just a man who could not stand by and do nothing. Any decent person would have done the same." But Harper would shake her head and pull him close. "You are my hero," she would whisper. You always will be. By 1890, Owen and Harper's ranch had grown into a successful operation. They had expanded their herd, built a larger barn, and hired a few hands to help with the work. Jack Thornton, now elderly and looking to slow down, had even approached Owen about potentially buying the Double J when he was ready to retire, a testament to how much Owen had proven himself over the years. Their children were thriving. Oliver, now 8, was already showing signs of becoming a skilled horseman, with a natural affinity for working with cattle. Hannah, 5 years old, was bright and curious, constantly asking questions about everything from why the sky was blue to where babies came from, much to her parents' amusement. One evening, as Owen and Harper sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard, Harper leaned her head on Owen's shoulder with a contented sigh. "Do you ever think about how different your life would have been if you had not decided to ride to Fort Davis that night?" she asked. Owen considered the question. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I try not to dwell on what-ifs. The fact is, I did ride out and I found you, and everything good in my life now stems from that decision. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over, even knowing how dangerous it was. Knowing you could have died in that storm, especially knowing that," Owen said. "Because the alternative, a life without you and our children, without this family we have built, that would not have been living. That would have been just existing, going through the motions without any real purpose or joy." Harper lifted her head to look at him, her green eyes soft with love. "I fall in love with you more every day, Owen O'Malley. Do you know that?" "I know," Owen said with a smile. "Because I feel the same way about you. Every morning I wake up next to you, every time I see you with our children, every moment we share, I fall a little deeper in love with you." They kissed, a sweet, lingering kiss that held all the years of their marriage, all the trials they had overcome, all the love they had built together. When they broke apart, Oliver and Hannah came running up to the porch, laughing and out of breath from their play. "Papa, tell us the storm story again," Hannah begged, climbing into Owen's lap. "You have heard it 100 times, Owen protested, but he was smiling. "Please," both children chorused. So Owen told the story once more, about the fevered woman in the stagecoach, about the decision to ride through the night, about the flooded creeks and the howling wind and the way he had pushed forward, because giving up was not an option. Harper added her own details, about waking up to learn what this stranger had done for her, about how kindness and courage had turned into love. As the children listened with rapt attention, Owen looked at Harper over their heads, and she smiled back at him. They both knew how lucky they were, how easily things could have turned out differently. But fate, or providence, or simple chance had brought them together, and they had taken that opportunity and built something beautiful from it. Life continued to unfold with its mixture of joys and challenges. In 1892, Harper gave birth to their third child, another son they named Samuel. The birth was difficult, and there were moments when Owen feared he might lose Harper, memories of that fevered girl in the stagecoach flooding back with terrifying intensity. But Harper was strong, stronger than Owen sometimes gave her credit for, and she came through safely with their healthy baby boy in her arms. "You scared me," Owen admitted later, holding Harper's hand as she recovered. "For a moment there I was back in that storm, racing against time, afraid I would not make it." "But you always make it," Harper said softly. "You always find a way to save me just like I save you. That is what partners do, Owen. We keep each other safe." The O'Malley family became well known and respected throughout the region. Owen's reputation as a fair employer and skilled rancher grew, and he found himself often called upon to help settle disputes or offer advice to younger ranchers just starting out. Harper became involved in the small school that had been established in Shafter, helping to teach the children reading and arithmetic, sharing the education her parents had given her. Their eldest, Oliver, grew into a responsible young man who showed every sign of following in his father's footsteps as a rancher. Hannah proved to have a gift for numbers and organization, often helping her mother with the ranch accounts and surprising both parents with her business acumen. Little Samuel was the wild one, always getting into mischief, but with such charm that he could talk his way out of any trouble. On their 10th anniversary, Owen surprised Harper with a gift he had been planning for months. He had gone to Fort Davis, to the pharmacy where Guthrie still worked despite his advancing age, and commissioned a special item. When he presented it to Harper that evening, she unwrapped the package to find a beautifully crafted wooden box. Inside, carefully preserved, were samples of the medicines Owen had ridden through the storm to obtain, along with a detailed account he had written of that night. Every moment from the decision to ride to the moment he returned to find her still alive. "I wanted you to have something tangible," Owen explained as Harper read through his words with tears streaming down her face. "Something that reminds us both of where we started and how far we have come. That night changed everything, Harper. It gave me you." "It gave us each other," Harper corrected through her tears. She stood and kissed him deeply. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. I will treasure it forever." The years continued to pass, each one adding to the tapestry of their life together. They celebrated holidays and birthdays, weathered economic downturns and drought years, rejoiced in good harvests and successful cattle sales. They watched their children grow, Oliver courting a nice girl from Fort Davis, Hannah announcing her intention to become a teacher, Samuel declaring his desire to explore the world beyond Texas. In 1897, Jack Thornton finally decided to retire, and Owen, with Harper's full support, purchased the Double J Ranch, consolidating it with his own operation to create one of the larger spreads in the area. It was a huge undertaking, both financially and in terms of the work required, but the O'Malley family pulled together to make it happen. Oliver, now 15 and nearly as skilled as his father, took on more responsibility. Hannah, 13, managed the books and helped organize the household and hired help. Even Samuel, at 5, did his part by helping to feed chickens and gather eggs. And Harper, as always, was the heart of the operation, keeping everyone organized, fed, and focused on their shared goals. One evening, after an exhausting day of moving cattle to new pasture, Owen and Harper found a quiet moment together. They walked out to the spot where Owen had proposed, looking down at the ranch that now bore their name, the O'Malley brand visible on fences and barns throughout the property. "Do you remember when this was all just a dream?" Harper asked. "When we were building that little 3-room house and hoping we could make ends meet?" "I remember being terrified I would fail you," Owen admitted, "that I would not be able to provide the life you deserved." Harper laughed and squeezed his hand. "Owen, you have given me more than I ever dreamed possible, not just this ranch or our home, but a family, a purpose, a life filled with love. Every day I thank God that fever brought me to Shafter, that you were the kind of man who would ride through a storm for a stranger." "You were never really a stranger," Owen said thoughtfully. "Even that first moment when I looked in the stagecoach and saw you there, I felt something. Like I recognized you somehow, even though we had never met. Maybe that is crazy, but it is the truth." "It is not crazy," Harper assured him. "I felt it too later when I woke up and saw you sitting in that chair watching over me. There was something in your eyes, such kindness and concern, and I remember thinking that I wanted to know you, to understand what kind of person would do what you had done." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over their land, their legacy. The ranch would continue after them, passed down to their children and grandchildren, a lasting testament to what could be built when two people found each other and chose to face life together. As the years moved into the new century, Owen and Harper entered their middle years with grace and satisfaction. Oliver married his sweetheart, Sarah, in 1901, and they built a house on the far side of the O'Malley Ranch, starting their own family. Owen and Harper became grandparents for the first time when Sarah gave birth to twin boys, and Owen found that holding those tiny babies brought back memories of his own children, of the terrifying joy of new life. Hannah eventually married as well, to a teacher from Fort Stockton, and though they moved away to start their own school, they visited regularly, bringing their own children to spend summers on the ranch. Samuel, true to his restless nature, left Texas to see the world, sending letters from places like San Francisco, New York, and even once from London, filled with descriptions of his adventures. Through it all, Owen and Harper remained each other's anchor. They were not immune to the passage of time, their hair graying, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and long years. But their love, if anything, had deepened. They could communicate with a glance, finish each other's sentences, and find comfort in each other's presence even without words. On their 20th anniversary, their children arranged a surprise celebration, inviting people from all over the region who had known Owen and Harper throughout their years in Shafter. Frank Morrison, now married with his own family, stood up to give a toast. 20 years ago, I watched my friend Owen make the craziest decision I had ever seen. He decided to ride through a storm that any sensible person would have waited out, all to save a woman he had never met. I thought he was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. The crowd laughed, and Frank grinned before continuing. But now, looking at everything he and Harper have built together, at the family they have raised and the respect they have earned, I know the truth. Owen was not brave or stupid. He was a man who recognized something precious when he saw it, and he was willing to risk everything to protect it. Harper, Owen, you two are proof that love really can conquer all obstacles. Happy anniversary. The celebration went on late into the night, filled with music and dancing and stories. But eventually, Owen and Harper slipped away, walking hand in hand to the hill that had become their special place over the years. 20 years, Harper mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I arrived in Shafter with that fever. Other times it feels like we have been together forever. Both are true somehow, Owen said. The time has passed so quickly, but I also cannot really remember what my life was like before you. You have become such a fundamental part of who I am. Harper leaned against him, and they stood together under the vast Texas sky. The same stars that had watched over Owen's desperate ride, now looking down on a life built from that single act of courage. As the 1900s progressed, the world changed rapidly around them. Automobiles began to appear on the roads, electricity came to some of the larger towns, and rumors of war in Europe filtered back to even remote places like Shafter. But the O'Malley Ranch remained a constant, a place where values like hard work, family, and love still mattered above all else. Owen eventually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, leaving most of the management to Oliver while he took on an advisory role. He was content to spend his time working with the horses, teaching his grandchildren to ride, and enjoying quiet evenings on the porch with Harper. They had earned their rest, everyone agreed. Owen was now in his 50s, Harper approaching 50, and they had built something remarkable not just in terms of the ranch's success, but in the family they had created and the example they had set for others. One afternoon, as they sat together watching Oliver's twins practice their roping skills, Harper turned to Owen with a thoughtful expression. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had not gotten that medicine in time, if I had died despite your ride?" Owen was quiet for a moment. "I try not to think about it," he admitted. "But yes, sometimes I wonder. I think my whole life would have been different, darker somehow. I might have continued on, but I would have carried another failure, another person I could not save. Instead, you lived, and you gave me a reason to believe in hope again." "We were both lost before we found each other," Harper reflected. "Both carrying grief and searching for purpose. Maybe that is why our connection was so immediate and so strong. We recognized kindred spirits in each other." "Maybe," Owen agreed. "Or maybe it was just meant to be. However you explain it, I am grateful for every day we have had together." Their later years were peaceful, filled with the satisfaction of watching their children and grandchildren thrive. Samuel eventually returned from his travels, settling in El Paso, where he opened a successful trading business, but he visited frequently, regaling the family with tales of his adventures. Hannah's school flourished, and she and her husband became respected educators. Oliver proved to be an even better rancher than Owen, implementing new techniques and expanding the operation while always honoring the foundation his parents had built. On their 30th anniversary, the family gathered again, this time at the old house Owen and Harper had built all those years ago. It was still standing, used now as a guest house, but carefully maintained. Standing in the doorway where Owen had proposed, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and friends, Harper gave a short speech. 30 years ago, I was a lost, sick young woman who thought her life was over. I had no family, no home, no future. Then this man, this impossible, stubborn, wonderful man, rode through a storm to save me. He gave me medicine that night, but more than that, he gave me hope. And from that hope, we built all of this." She gestured to the assembled crowd, to the ranch visible through the windows, to the life they had created. "I learned something important from Owen's ride through that storm. I learned that love is not just a feeling. Love is action. Love is choosing to fight even when the odds are against you. Love is refusing to give up on someone, even when it would be easier to walk away. Owen taught me that, and I have tried to live by that lesson every day since." She turned to Owen, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for saving me, not just that night, but every day since. Thank you for building this life with me, for being my partner and my friend and my great love. I would not trade a single moment of our years together, not even the difficult ones, because they all brought us to this place of joy." Owen pulled her close, kissing her forehead as the crowd applauded. "You saved me just as much as I saved you," he whispered. "Never forget that." As they moved into their 60s, health challenges began to appear. Owen developed arthritis in his hands from years of hard work, and Harper's eyesight began to fail. But they faced these obstacles together, adapting and helping each other through the difficulties. Owen read to Harper when her eyes grew too tired, and Harper helped massage Owen's aching joints at the end of long days. In 1914, as the world plunged into the Great War, the O'Malley Ranch remained a haven of peace and continuity. They worried about the larger world, prayed for the young men going off to fight, and donated what they could to relief efforts. But they also counted their blessings, grateful that their own children were settled and safe, that their grandchildren were growing up in relative peace and prosperity. It was during this time that Owen and Harper began writing down their story, wanting to preserve it for future generations. They worked on it together in the evenings, Owen dictating while Harper wrote in her careful script, despite her failing eyesight. They wanted their descendants to know how it all began, to understand that the family's success was built on a foundation of love and sacrifice. "Do you think they will understand?" Harper asked one evening as they worked on the manuscript. "Do you think they will appreciate what that night meant, how close we came to never having any of this?" "I think they will," Owen said confidently. "Because we are going to tell them the truth, all of it. The fear, the doubt, the moments when it seemed impossible, but also the determination, the love, the refusal to give up. That is a story worth preserving." By 1920, Owen and Harper had become beloved elders in the community. The ranch continued to thrive under Oliver's management, and their legacy was secure. They had lived to see automobiles become common, to experience electricity finally reaching even Shafter, to witness the world change in ways they never could have imagined. But through all those changes, their love remained constant. On their 40th anniversary, they made the climb up to their special hill one more time. It was harder now, their bodies no longer young and resilient, but they were determined to reach that spot that held so many memories. Standing there, looking out over the land they had made their own, Owen took Harper's hand. "40 years," he said with wonder in his voice. "40 years since I carried you from that stagecoach, sure that I was losing you before I even had the chance to know you." 40 years of building a life together, Harper added. Of raising children, creating a home, loving each other through every joy and every sorrow. "Do you have any regrets, Owen?" "Only one," Owen said, and when Harper looked at him in surprise, he smiled. "I regret that I only have one lifetime to spend with you. If I could live it all again, I would. I would ride through that storm 1,000 more times if it meant having you by my side." Harper felt tears spill down her cheeks. "That is the most romantic thing you have ever said to me, and you have said many romantic things over the years." "It is the truth," Owen said simply. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Harper O'Malley. You gave meaning to my life, purpose to my days. Everything good I have ever accomplished has been because you believed in me, supported me, loved me." They kissed, a gentle kiss that spoke of 4 decades of love, of nights spent wrapped in each other's arms, of mornings waking up together, of a lifetime of shared moments both mundane and extraordinary. As the sun set on their 40th anniversary, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Owen and Harper made their way slowly back down the hill. Their children and grandchildren were waiting, a celebration prepared. There would be food and laughter, stories and toasts. But for just a moment, it was only the two of them, walking hand in hand as they had done so many times before, grateful for every step they had taken together. In the years that followed, age continued to take its toll, but Owen and Harper faced it with the same partnership that had defined their marriage from the beginning. When Owen's arthritis made it difficult for him to button his own shirt, Harper's failing eyes did not prevent her gentle hands from helping him. When Harper's memory began to fade slightly, Owen was there to remind her of the details, to tell her stories about their life together until the memories came back into focus. They lived to see their great-grandchildren born, to hold new generations in their arms and tell them the story of the storm and the fever and the desperate ride that had made everything possible. The youngest ones did not fully understand yet, but their parents made sure they knew that Grammy Harper and Grandpa Owen had a special love story, one worth remembering and honoring. In the spring of 1925, Owen and Harper celebrated their 46th anniversary quietly, just the two of them and their immediate family. Oliver had taken over the ranch completely now, and Owen had finally, truly retired. He and Harper spent their days in the rocking chairs on their porch, watching the world go by, content in each other's presence. "We have had a good run, have we not?" Owen said one afternoon as they sat together, the sun warm on their faces. "The best," Harper agreed. "I could not have asked for a better partner, a better life. You kept your promise, Owen. You saved me that night, and you have continued to save me every day since by loving me so completely." "And you saved me right back," Owen reminded her. "Do not ever forget that. We saved each other." As evening approached and the Texas sky began its nightly transformation into a canvas of colors, Owen and Harper sat together in peaceful silence. They did not need words anymore. After nearly 5 decades together, they could communicate through touch, through shared glances, through the simple comfort of presence. Their children and grandchildren came and went. The ranch continued its rhythms, and the world kept changing around them. But in that moment, in the peaceful twilight of their lives, Owen and Harper were exactly where they belonged. Together, surrounded by the life they had built, secure in a love that had weathered every storm. The story of the cowboy who rode through a storm to save the fevered woman had become legend in their family and throughout the region. But for Owen and Harper, it was simply the beginning of their story, the moment when two lost souls found each other and chose to build something beautiful from that chance meeting. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars that had watched over Owen's desperate ride all those years ago, Harper leaned her head on Owen's shoulder. "I love you," she whispered. "I have loved you from the moment I understood what you did for me, and I will love you beyond this life into whatever comes next." "I love you too," Owen replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You are my miracle, Harper, my second chance, my greatest blessing. Thank you for choosing to stay in Shafter all those years ago, for building this life with me." They sat together as full darkness fell. Two people who had beaten impossible odds, who had turned a moment of crisis into a lifetime of love, who had proven that sometimes the greatest romances begin with a single act of courage in the face of a storm. Their legacy would live on through their children and grandchildren, through the ranch that bore their name, through the story that would be told and retold for generations. But more than any material success, their true legacy was the example they set of what love could be when two people committed to each other completely, supporting and saving each other through every challenge life presented. As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Owen helping Harper to her feet and Harper steadying Owen when his balance faltered, they moved together with the practiced ease of 5 decades of partnership. They had ridden through many storms together since that fateful night in 1879, some literal and some metaphorical. But they had always emerged on the other side stronger, more connected, more certain of their love. The story of Owen O'Malley and Harper Ellsworth was, in the end, exactly what it appeared to be. A love story for the ages, born from fever and storm, nurtured through hardship and joy, and lasting until their final days. It was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things in life come from moments of crisis, that courage and compassion can change everything, and that true love, once found, can overcome any obstacle. Years later, long after Owen and Harper had passed peacefully in their sleep within hours of each other, their descendants would gather around fires on cold nights and tell the story. They would talk about the storm, the fevered woman, the desperate ride, and the love that grew from those frightening hours. They would pass down the values Owen and Harper had lived by: loyalty, courage, compassion, and the unwavering commitment to stand by those you love no matter what challenges arise. The O'Malley Ranch continued to thrive, generation after generation, a testament to what Owen and Harper had built together. And though the world changed dramatically in the decades and centuries that followed, The story of the cowboy who rode through a storm to save the woman who would become his wife remained constant. A beautiful reminder that love, in its purest form, is simply the choice to act selflessly for another, to risk everything for someone who matters, to refuse to give up even when all hope seems lost. Owen and Harper's story was complete, their ending as beautiful and fitting as any romance could hope for. Two people who found each other against all odds, who built a life together filled with love and purpose, who left behind a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. They had lived fully, loved completely, and proved that sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales can come true, even in the harsh reality of the Wild West.